My name is Amy Kinsel. I'm Dean of the Division of Social Sciences, Equity and Social Justice, Library and Parent-Child Center. Today's topic is the experience of the participants in a study abroad program in the Republic of South Africa in the summer of 2015. The title of today's presentation, The Challenge and Promise of a Multicultural South Africa, suggests that South Africa, a country of 53 million people, has undergone many changes and continues to grow. Post-apartheid South Africa is commonly dated to 1994, which is when Nelson Mandela was first elected president. Since then, this country, which has 11 official languages, has had its share of ups and downs, and we'll hear from the presenters what the current trajectory is in their view of South Africa. In August and September, this group of Shoreline students, under the leadership of Dr. Ernest Johnson, spent 4 weeks in South Africa, participating in social and historical lectures. They toured Cape Town and the surrounding area. They interacted with South Africans of different races, religions, ethnicities, and classes, and did a lot more too. So, many of you already know Dr. Ernest Johnson, Dr. J. Currently a professor of multicultural studies, I should say critical multicultural studies, in the Equity and Social Justice program at Shoreline. He's lectured here and at other colleges and universities on American history, African American history, multiculturalism, linguistics, religious studies, and ethnic studies. He's currently faculty advisor for the Muslim Student Association. This is the second time he's led a group of Shoreline students on a South Africa study abroad trip. Joining him are Brenna, Becca, Yeji, Danica, Priscilla, Tyler, Prince, Alex, and Siddhartha. And I'm going to say a brief thing about the format. Dr. Johnson will say a few words, and then the students will speak. After this, they will respond to questions, so hold your questions until after they're done with the presentation. If you're going to answer questions, there will be a handheld microphone. This is being recorded, so we want you to speak into the microphone so that it gets on the recording. You can write your questions on a card if you prefer not to speak into the microphone, and there will be people collecting the cards during the talk if you want to jot down a question while you're listening. So now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ernest Johnson and the students who went with him in the South Africa Study Abroad program this year.
Okay, thank you. I'm Mike. Yeah, so just factually, this is the fourth group that I've taken to South Africa. I took 15 students, 10 of them are here today, 9 from Shoreline and 1 sitting in the audience from the University of Washington. I'm not going to say much. They're going to speak for themselves. It was a pleasure to be able to work with this young group of folks. They have been working really hard to put this program on for you and to share with you what their feelings and their experiences were there. So that's all I have to say, and I want to turn it over to the group, and they're going to begin.
All right. So we're actually going to start off with a little rap from Danica, Yeji, and Tyler on the drums.
Tyler on the beat.
So enjoy.
Alright, I'll follow up behind you, Yeji.
This be the prayer connecting every layer to my brothers and my sisters. Let go of thoughts of the colors of the genders. I may be from across cold seas, but this language understood universally, crossing boundaries, healing magically. Do you understand, B? Same energy between you and me interconnecting. Deep roots of the human empathy, black or white, bright red. When we bleed, can we see there is strength through our unity? That is why I chose to embark the journey to feel the pain of South African history. A humble student to our teachings, learning meaning to humility and seeking. Every sunrise an opportunity in class to take up lies buried in the past. They try to burn the truth in the ash, but I hear the screams, murder of the mass. Battle hasn't passed, broken bones still need a cast. Black Black is beautiful, don't ever forget the words of Biko till the time of his death. This the path to the next step, cause there was still a separation in the education within the nation. Something real wrong with this equation. How can you expect class elevation when you still got European dictations? Open your eyes, get up, stand up, awake, embrace the inner spirit of the lake. Rinse away all the hate, break down the gates. Join the oceans together, current pulling asunder. For the truth, gotta stay searching. Open your eyes and they start emerging. The oppression of the dark skin. But mention racism be the sin. Apartheid engine existing within. And I can't imagine it was done by a human. But the spirit of apartheid still pumps alive, haunting streets of the night, walking up in the skies. Economic slavery, only one color seen in the poverty. The minority majority, yet to reach equality, the black man is still suffering in their own land of birthing. I was shocked by my findings. White statue proudly standing. The oppression that reminds and the people hurt and for certain, but through it all they still sing so beautifully. The song of hope for humanity, blessed so musically, and don't forget artistically, painting truth in the streets. Let us dance till we're all free, till we're all free. Love is the only key.
South Africa, I'm a traveler in pursuit of the truth, escaping lies that been taught since youth. Had to see for myself, had to get a closer look, getting tired of reading manipulated textbooks. Used to put my hand to heart, turning to pledge my nation. Too young to see how pride causes separation, too oblivious for peaceful negotiations, too busy pushing us inside integration, left our souls in the midst of assimilation. Discrimination, the biggest crime that we're faced with. Wouldn't mind segregation if it meant black unification. All I see is colonial invasion, the deterioration of a child's comprehension, blinding their perception, dreams emitted within, faded glimpse outside the box we live in. Step out the box.
Yeah.
Now my goal is to hold hands with yours together, fighting evil corporations. Force pledge to the flag of failing resources, stripping more we can afford, running out of choices. The U.S. preaches opportunity, meaning middle class still broken, voiceless. Systematic problems rooted everywhere it seems, but together we can water the seed of Madiba Street until we end the long walk to his dream. Renamed Chiluwe in honor of Steve, who we stand, modern abolitionists in remembrance of the father of our consciousness. We are the uncommon shamans, healers of the nation we're jamming, cause the best medicine is found in connection. To laugh, dance, pray, eat in collaboration. That's our master plan to protect the roots of our generation. Hope our future understands coexistence. It's written in our heartbeats. If only you could listen. Commit to your community. We won't give in to the comfort of society. Remembering to keep the dreams alive. Kids looking up to you, let the culture survive. Do it for all the brave soldiers who sacrificed. We won't stop until justice rings for the victimized. The power of people is stronger than the people in power. Dedicate this to the homeless to bring back what is ours. We do it from the landscape original to this land. Honoring Aboriginal man, we do it for our ancestors stunted by slavery, our sisters children by poverty. We won't stop until black businesses running the streets equally, even when the illusion seems to bring us happiness. Remember, ignorance is bliss. I'm not here for volunteering or tourism. I'm here to dive deep in the Cape and rock with you. Come on.
So we thought that would be a good way to start off the presentation, kind of give you an overview of the trip, and feature like the group as a whole. In general, we were very musical and kind of always dancing and singing when we were over there. Same with the people over there, so we figured that would be a good way to start. So we are the 9 out of 14 that have went to South Africa. Here with us, we have Becca. And we have Prince. Josh is not with us. Lynch is not with us. We have Brenna, that's me. Yeji. Siddhartha. Ryland's back there, actually. And we also have with us Alex and Priscilla. Amy is not here with us, and Dejin is not here with us. Tyler doesn't have a picture anymore.
He's right here.
But he's right here. Justin's not with us, and Danika's right here. Some other key people that were on the trip with us, Dr. J, over there in the audience. Seki, who was our van driver for our road trip and for other excursions throughout the trip. He kind of became one of our best friends over there. We kind of had this running joke with him. He would ask us, "Are we good?" And then all of us would be like, "Good." And he would just always say that to us. He introduced us to a lot of amazing things. And then we have Moss, the dude in the striped sweater. He was our on-site coordinator. So those are the people. Some key topics we'll be covering in this presentation are some of the amazing sites we saw while in South Africa. The museums we visited, which were a lot, and we learned a lot of important information at those. The important people that we learned about while we were there. The youth of South Africa. We'll be covering some of the events that we attended and while we were over there that would never have happened over here, and the townships and schools we visited in the townships. So we had 15 people, 10 days, and that big van right there. The entire back seat was filled with suitcases for clothes for one of the child care centers we dropped off at. So we were kind of squished in there, made for some fun times. Let the sightseeing commence. Hermanus Bay is one of the first places we visited on the road trip. For some reason, the photo isn't showing up in the upper right-hand corner, but this was the first stop along the way of our 10-day road trip. And we left really, really early in the morning to get there. So by the time we were at Hermanus Bay, all of us were kind of still half asleep and groggy. And we walked out, and just this magnificent sight was what we first saw when we got off the bus. It was kind of breathtaking. And it's a famous whale watching spot, but we actually did not see any whales while we were there. It was, Boulders Beach. That was one of the first places we went to as a group together. I would say it was probably our first bonding experience as a group, and it was also one of the first times it was really apparent that we were in a different country and on the other side of the world. Just these huge boulders and penguins running around outside of a zoo, which was an experience in itself. They were actually in mating season, so they weren't very friendly towards us. They were kind of doing their own thing, but that was some of the pictures from Boulders Beach. We actually came up with a dance, as you can see in that middle one. It was called the Penguin, and we all kind of were going around like this with the penguins. Next up on the trip was Mussel Bay. And Siddhartha.
Okay, so Mussel Bay was the first place that we stopped on our road trip to throughout. And we arrived there at 4 p.m. It was dark. The sun was going down, and the view was just so amazing that we had to go to the beach and check it out. And all of us just sat and played music as we looked into the ocean as the sun was sort of going down. I don't know. Yeah, we danced a lot. Dr. J came in, and he was teaching us Tai Chi, and we learned how to do that. Later that day, we went back to our camp, to our train rooms, and we slept. Yeah.
In a train.
In the train, and that was memorable. That was the most memorable thing for me, to be able to sleep in the train. Yeah.
All right, next up. Danika's going to take it away. We're going to talk about human origins.
Hello. So, our human origins exhibit was located in Mussel Bay at Pinnacle Point Caves. And as you can see, there's the roaring Indian Ocean right there, which was pretty vast, but actually in the past, it was pushed out 100 kilometers away, and it was a big Sahara. before with large game like zebras, elephants, rhinos. And as the climate is getting warmer all over the world, sea levels are rising. So now we have this ocean because a lot of the icebergs are melting. But so the people back in the day, the Aboriginals, took refuge in the caves away from the ocean and also from the big game. And there's a lot of archaeological excavations being put out in these caves because the origins of these people lead into all of our ancestral existences. So people from all over the world, students from America, Australia, are all flying over to South Africa to study these caves because there's a lot of signs of life. And let's see. Now what's happening to Pinnacle Point is it's become a golf course and a casino, and a lot of the runoff from the chemicals is dripping down into the caves, which changes the really important data such as dates of the rocks and colors. So they had a lot of buckets in the caves to try to contain the chemicals, and also they put a lot of sandbags in the caves so that it would prevent people from digging and ruining the caves. So it's just really sad that it's come to becoming industrialized and becoming a golf course when a lot of our important history is rooted here, and it should be preserved better. And also, one more thing I want to add is on the floor you could see there's a lot of shellfish, shells, and stuff like that. People used to feed on limpids, and the scientists believe that humans, but I was trying to think of the word. Humans gained consciousness when we started feeding on shellfish and omega-6, so this place is really important to where humans evolved.
I thought another interesting point to add to that would be our tour guide who was taking us around. When he told us about the runoff from the golf course and from the casinos, we asked, well, why haven't they closed down the golf course? Why haven't they moved it? And he, who worked at the golf course, said, because we have money and the scientists don't, was basically something that the conclusion he came to. So I thought that was really impactful. Next up, Coffee Bay. Yeji's gonna take this one away.
So this is Coffee Bay, and it was the most magical place I'm sure me and a lot of us have ever been to in our lives. Like, it just had the most beautiful, vibrant green hills, and it was neighboring the beautiful, vast Indian Ocean. And it just had the most strong energy, but yet so peaceful. And we had the opportunity of going on a 3-hour hike along this beautiful view. And I can just say I was just so entranced by the nature the whole time, engulfed in each single moment. Like, I just felt my senses were on fire, and it was just one of those times where you just feel alive. But this beautiful place that so many of us fell in love with is actually in danger. We came across a dried out waterfall. It was now nothing but rocks cascading down the hillside. But at one point, there used to be water pouring down, bringing it to life, and now it was nothing but a trickle because of climate change. Coffee Bay is literally drying out. The grass is drying to a point where it's now inedible for a lot of the goats, and they're dying. And when these goats die, they are a large source of income for the people that live here. And without this income, now they're looking towards alternatives, such as making this beautiful place into a city so that no one else can enjoy it the way that we got to enjoy it. I really learned through this experience that we share this earth. It is our home and our only home. And the decisions that each and every country makes affects all the others because we're tied together in this complex cycle that most of us can't even begin to understand. And it just seems so unfair that Our irresponsible environmental decisions from around the world are threatening the peaceful lifestyle of those who are living in Coffee Bay. A peaceful lifestyle that understands harmony and balance. And also, Coffee Bay just taught me about there's so many different ways of existing, eco-friendly ways of existing. A person named Sid, this really great guy that we met, brought us to his home, which was just this little shack. But it was the most amazing place because he painted it all the colors that he wanted. He had his own little eco-friendly irrigation system for his garden on the side. And he just had the fattest smile I've ever seen on anyone. And he told me, I am so happy. Poverty is only a mindset. And you always know that materials don't bring happiness, but he's someone who actually made me understand what that means.
So Siddhartha, okay. Another place we visited along the way on our road trip was Addo, and in specific, Addo Elephant Park. It's this huge reserve for elephants and other animals. It's actually the largest elephant reserve in the entire world. And so right off the bat, we get in our little van. Actually, Seki was driving the van. So we were in that van I showed you the picture of, and we're like going up this dirty brick road, and Seki's driving really fast, and Seki-like. And we come across this family of elephants just right off the bat to our left. And that first picture that was right behind that elephant, there was like no zoom on that. That elephant was right there outside of our window along with its mom. And it was just kind of another reminder to us that we were in a different part of the world. And yeah, there's some zebras. We saw a lot of warthogs as well. This was more of a sightseeing, and Becca has something she wants to add.
And I mean, also, when we were done with Addo Elephant Park, when we were traveling to the other places we needed to go, we were on the highway. And all of a sudden, Justin in the back seat with me yells, "Giraffes!" And our van just careens to a halt. And we're all like, what? Where? And so they're all like near the gate that separates these animals from getting onto these roads from getting hurt. And they're all looking at us like, what are you doing? And then everyone's like, shh, quiet. And so we had to back up really slow. And these giraffes are like, okay, and then they eventually moved off because we scared the crap out of them. But we got amazing pictures, and it's too bad we don't have some up there. But I mean, that's how huge this place is and how the animals are just everywhere. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Our group had that problem a lot. We were really excitable and really loud. So while on this journey, every time we saw an animal that we hadn't seen, we'd be like, oh my God, it's a turtle. And then we'd all be like, move out of my way. And then we'd be trying to creep through the windows, and the animal would run away because we're loud and obnoxious. But we're going to go on to the next part, the Congo Caves, which Becca is going to talk about. Really, really cool.
So this place literally happened at the very tail end of our road trip. And it was a huge kind of milestone for some of us, me included. I had no idea I was claustrophobic until I started describing all the caves I had to go through. My palms started getting really sweaty. Other people around me were thinking, I can't do this, and just to kind of give you an idea of what it's like, I don't know if you can really see it, but in this large area, this is the Grand Hall, and I think it's approximately as big as a football field. And in here, they would have a lot of concerts by these famous orchestras a while back. And when people would listen and when the concerts would end, a lot of the patrons would go around and take off pieces of the stalagmites and the stalactites, I think. And that's just ruining the heritage of this cave. We're trying to preserve this for future generations to look at, and if you're stealing parts of it, that's not helpful. So we literally went through here the first half, and then I'll show you, let's see, there we go. So these are just little snippets of what we had to go through, but I mean, we went through several different sections. The first one we went through was called the Tunnel of Love. And this cave was like approximately 74 centimeters high and very not wide at all. So we were had to go through it like this and sometimes like this.
This
And
one had to go through the caves like that.
I was actually behind him, and you should have seen it. He was like, oh my God. He just had to like shove himself through, and I'm like laughing at him the entire time, which is terrible. But I mean, it helped me to not be anxious anymore. So yeah, he was fun to follow. And then we had, several different sections, like the coffin, which was like this hexagonally shaped hole that you had to kind of go through and crouch. The Devil's Chimney, that was a place. So Brenna in the middle, that's where it begins, and it's literally this crack in the wall that you have to push yourself up. It's like at an 85-degree angle, like it's crazy. And it was about 3.5 meters long, which is approximately 11 and a half feet, 45 centimeters wide, which is 17.7 inches wide. So our professor, to encourage us to get through this shaft, because a lot of people were like, this isn't gonna happen. He literally said to everyone, it's just like birth, you gotta push. And you had to move with your feet, and you couldn't really grasp it, and it was insane. But, we all had a really good time. I ended up getting an adrenaline rush, so it was enjoyable for me, and I ended up loving it at the end when it scared, like, the dickens out of me when he was first describing, oh, you're going to be army crawling for this many meters, and I was thinking, no. It was crazy, but that was the Congo Caves, and don't know what's next. All right, and next up is going to be Camps Bay.
About that really quick. We're just going to go over this one really quickly. Camps Bay is in Cape Town itself, and it's in one of the richer areas, which was very, very obvious when we got there. A ton of white people, for one. That was just kind of what stuck out the most. And it was a beautiful area of town, but it was very rich. I think there's another slide. We saw one of the most beautiful sunsets of our lives when we were there, but it was just kind of interesting to be eating at this restaurant while, we're just a bunch of Americans eating at this rich restaurant while there are people in the back making our food, and I don't know, it was super interesting. I don't know if you want to add anything, Prince.
First, I want to say Brenna takes the best pictures in the world. And second, what I noticed when we came down there is that, this is loud. When I came down there is that when we were going down, we saw how rich the area was. It looked like Beverly Hills almost when we were coming down. It was crazy. I had this false perception that in this area that we wouldn't see anything too similar to the US, and that totally blew my mind when I came down there. And the sad part to me was when we got down there, everybody's having fun, and you saw people drinking margaritas, and everybody's on the beach, and it's all this and that. But then as the day went by, you saw all the people at the bus stops that actually worked in all these places, and they're just going home. They just look sad, all these different things, and it's just wow, we get to come there and experience this great time, but we're not thinking about the workers and all the people that actually make this happen, And it's just seeing that just really did something to me. So I was it changed my perception and how I related to people and how I even spoke to people. Because a lot of people, down there in that specific area, people don't really talk to, I guess, what they would say the help. That's touche or whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? They'll just see them walk by and act like they don't exist. So when I saw people, I was like, oh, hey, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? My name's Prince, And they were just so shocked at my demeanor. And then we start talking, and they're just like everybody else. They're just trying to work hard, take care of the family, and try to get somewhere in life, you know what I'm saying? But it's just, the struggle is real when you have a place where the economy is so low that the rand, and compared to the US dollar, it's oh my gosh, it's horrible, you know what I'm saying? I think every dollar here is 14 rand there right now. So it's just, really, it's an economical problem. And it's everybody just can't get up and move we can here in the US, you know what I'm saying? You live in a poor area, you know what I'm saying? You work hard, you may be able to migrate and start low somewhere else, but you go there, you're gonna start low wherever you go, So that's just how it is.
Yeah. Next up, the Cape of Good Hope. Just going to run through this one really quickly because we need to get to the rest of our presentation. But this was another magical place in South Africa, kind of the southernmost tip of Africa, and it was just. It was breathtakingly beautiful. We left that, and I don't know, I at least when I was there, I was reflecting a lot just about the trip in general, because it was right at the rear end of our trip. And there were a lot of baboons that were stealing people's clothing, and it was a great time. Just a beautiful part of the world. Table Mountain, I think Prince was going to take this one away.
So Table Mountain was absolutely gorgeous. It's really, they call it Table Mountain because it's literally a flat rock looking over all of Cape Town. So it's just like the most beautiful view in the world. There's Dr. J. Cheesin. And the beautiful thing is they actually started Table Mountain, like actually transportation to the top in 1929. It's like literally this huge, it's almost like a video game. There's this huge like circular bus almost that like is on these strings coming up, this cable, and it takes you up there. And when you're on it, you're like, am I safe? Because you're literally looking down and like literally anything happens, it's done, it's wrap. And so that was cool. And then we got at the top, there's like 2,200 different types of species, animals, plants, etc. But there's one little animal that you saw everywhere called a daisy. And they're related to an elephant, but they actually look like a big fat rat. So like it's really weird, like so they're running around everywhere trying to get people's food and stuff like that. And it's funny because they know exactly who has food, because if you try to like go up and like pet one, they're like, but if you have food, they're like, hey, you know. So it's interesting. But yeah, Table Mountain's great. Another thing, when I was talking to a lot of people in the townships and stuff like that, a lot like people have lived in South Africa their entire lives and have never gone to Table Mountain. You know, and just in 2014, they celebrated their, I think it was 85th anniversary, where like 27 million visitors have visited since its opening. And it's just like, when I was talking to people, they're like, oh, I've never been there. I was like, oh yeah, Table Mountain, it was cool. It was, you know, it was cool. Yeah, so then like, what's up with you, you know? So it was just, I don't, yeah, it's mind-boggling, you know what I'm saying? Just to know that it's like that. But yeah, it's a beautiful view. Definitely, I'd recommend you going. And yeah.
Robben Island, going to touch on this with Becca.
So Robben Island, I'm not sure about the rest of the group, but I know to me it was a pinnacle point that really made me realize the oppressive effects of apartheid in the very beginning when the Dutch settlers came to colonize South Africa. In the 17th century, this prison, this island, held political prisoners such as, you know, important Xhosa chiefs and leaders, and especially when they resisted the colonization by the Dutch, they would throw them and their families in there, and it's also been used as a quarantine station for the leper colony. So it's an island that has a lot of suffering in it. So, you know, there's a lot of injustice that's just seeped into it. Mandela himself was in prison there for 18 years. And when we were taking our tour, we were given a tour by, I believe, one of the political prisoners that experienced being inside these walls. And you're just going in and you're touring on this bus, listening to this tour guide, seeing all these different buildings, you know, where the security guards lived, and you finally get into these prisons and you see Mandela's cell. And it's just sobering. It just really makes you realize that this has happened. And, you know, it wasn't too long ago where it was a maximum security prison, at least until 1991, and it closed in 1996. That it still really bothers me that was not too long ago. And I was, just this nice side note, getting a present for one of my family members back home, and I was talking to a store merchant. He was like, yeah, I used to visit there when I was like a kid. And the very first visit, he visited one of his own family members that was in prison there, and the couple after, it was just a museum, but he was visiting it when he was a child. So, you know, it was just, yeah, it was really sobering, and it was a really good thing to experience.
One thing that blew my mind about Robben's Island is that one of the tasks that they had the prisoners do, including Mandela when he was there, is break huge rock down into like little pieces. And it was really just like almost a torture thing. You're doing that all day, every day. And then a lot of people, that's something like that could drive you crazy. And to think Mandela did that for all this time, came out with a mindset of not hate, but just like, oh, now what can I do to change things? That's just powerful. And so that just really blew my mind as well. I just wanted to put that point in.
All right, next up, we're going to talk about some of the museums we visited while we're there, and Tyler's going to take this one away.
Hello. So on the trip, we visited a lot of museums, and one of the great things about some of the museums is many of them were actually built into historic sites around Cape Town. For instance, there was the the Slave Lodge, which at one point in time when the Dutch were settling there was literally a point where slaves were moved in and out of the lodge and stayed there and were sold at auction. And down there on the left is actually like a stand where people were placed on the podium and auctioned off. And it was really powerful to go to the Slave Lodge and to see the podium where it actually happened, and then to see cars driving by either side of it because it was in the middle of a two-way street. And so seeing history like that and seeing stuff built over it, but the way it's been preserved and to maintain the education of things like this happening was really powerful to see that, and then experience the effects of post-apartheid in Africa while we were there. And then there were several other places we went to. There was the Jewish Museum and the Holocaust Museum, which was interesting to see the historical, the connection between the Holocaust and the apartheid itself, and the impact that Jewish people had on the movement, in part because they understand that kind of suffering, and they helped a lot with the movement. And again, it was a museum that took place at one of the first synagogues to be built in Cape Town. We also saw a museum at District 6, which was kind of one of the last areas of the city that was kind of preserved, after the apartheid laws. While many people were being pushed out of the town, this area was. Okay. We're at. In the 60s, it was.
Yeah,
I don't think we really have time for that many details. I mean,
as you can see, it was a really, really colorful, vibrant place. There's another slide too on the next, just Table Mountain right there. Look at that view. It's one of the last places in Cape Town where the poorer people, not the white people, still had a beautiful view of Table Mountain, we're living in a nice place. That's District 6. We visited a lot of colleges while we were there, and I don't really know if we need to talk about that right now. So yeah, we visited a lot of colleges. And here's some key people that we met and learned about while we were in South Africa.
So this woman on the right is Fatima, and she taught me something that I could really bring back with me to the States. And this is a big difference between South Africa and America. She told all of us during her lecture that she moved to New York, and whenever her friends wanted to come over or hang out, you would have to call and then maybe take out your planner and be like, oh, maybe I'll be free on Friday or something like that. But she said, when you truly miss somebody and you truly want to be there for someone, you can just show up at their doorstep. And it taught me about just breaking the barriers. There's so many ideas in society that we don't have time for the people we love and our friends. But she reminded me that we should be grateful for them all the time. And if you really feel truly about something, then go out and do it. Remind the people that you love them or you miss them, and just be there for them, because we don't have an endless amount of time. And she also talked to us about Nelson Mandela, and she said that when she first met Nelson Mandela, he was talking to her boss, and when Nelson Mandela came in, he notices everybody. And this is one other thing she taught me. When you're a truly aware person, you'll notice everybody in the room. And she said that whenever Nelson Mandela met somebody, he would forever remember their name and who they were and their face, because he recognized people like solely as individuals. And I really appreciated that she said that, because it reminded me that we must recognize the people around us too, because we're all very valuable on this earth. And one other thing she said is that when Nelson Mandela held a conversation was that he would glance over at everyone else in the room, kind of inviting them to join their conversation too. And this really just stuck out to me, that Nelson Mandela's personality was, he was so aware of everyone, and he was always welcoming everybody to kind of break that barrier and come together. And that's why he was a leader and he could change the nation.
Okay, we gotta move on to Steve Biko.
People are going to have to leave in 5 minutes. We should have some questions and answers, so we can make it close.
Okay, let's just go through some, like the last of the slides really quick then, I guess.
You don't have to go through all of them. Just close it, have the slides in the background, and open it up for questions.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up for questions then, since people have to leave soon. I guess we weren't paying enough attention to time. And we'll go through the slides as...
Yeah, that microphone is live.
Okay.
He has a live microphone. So
Okay, I figured since people were handing it.
to the audience.
Okay.
You guys would share these microphones.
Okay, I'm good here. I'll come central.
There's time for questions?
So yeah, where's this, can I have a slide?
Just raise your hand if you have a question. Tree, be sure to turn that microphone on.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey. I know you all. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us, and I'm so happy that all of you enjoyed it. I was wanting to hear your thoughts on some of the parallels that you drew between South Africa and the United States. So I know, some of you talked about going to the prison and that being impactful, and seeing the disparities between white and black people in Cape Town, and a lot of that exists here. So I just want to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Does anybody want to say that, or do you want me to talk about it?
If you got it, go.
Just give me a second to think about it.
I can say something.
Okay, Danica.
Hello? Hello? Anybody? I'll just talk loud.
Talk. Scream.
So basically something else
Louder,
that
louder.
was a parallel was the segregation. The segregation that we saw in South Africa, because although there's not external racism, people weren't just putting it out there, but you could see internally that all the businesses were usually white owned, but then there's always black workers. So this is something that we learned to be conscious about, what businesses we were actually supporting during our trip. And I think that was a big parallel that I could bring back to Seattle and notice the segregation or the things that are happening here in that way. And then I did notice there's a lot of different residents, just like, there's Greenwood, North Seattle. Hello? You compare that to, and then you compare that to South Seattle. So that was one of the parallels that I've noticed. And now my mind and my eyes are opened when I support different businesses.
And Prince also wants to.
And just something that I noticed was, what created these parallels and the disparity was the 1913 Land Act in South Africa that actually gave 87% of land to the white Africans. So and then the rest of the 13% was actually put in a trust, not even given to the remaining native Africans. So that's what really set this tone of white ownership and black workers and so on. Yeah.
And as far as dividing it goes, I remember Dr. J talking a little bit about as far as schools go in Seattle and how you draw district lines and how you can change how district lines are drawn. I remember how like people say there's not racism in the United States. Like there's no law that says like, oh, white people, like there's no apartheid law here that said white people should live here and black people should live here. But there were things that the government and like people around us did to ensure that like if you're white, you're going to be like in a nice area of town and your school's going to have more money. And then if you're black or any other person of color, you're going to be in the poor areas. Another question?
Question back there.
Is there a mic? Okay.
Mike.
I just have a question because when you do the slide pictures, I realize that most of the captions and the words that they use is mainly English. And I'm wondering what kind of language that they speak like during like daily, and what kind of language that they learn in school and how they talk to their teacher, and what kind of languages, foreign language that they would learn in school.
So the main language in Cape Town, or one of the main languages in Cape Town, South Africa, is Xhosa, and then
In the country, it's Zulu.
in here.
Yeah, the largest ethnic group in the country are the Zulu speakers. And where we were, they were the Xhosa speakers.
You already have a mic.
That's true. You're never going to have too many mics. But so the largest, South Africa is very interesting because the majority of the people there are what they would call Bantu speakers. They speak from the Niger Kordofanian, the Niger languages of Greenberg's classification. Those Bantu speakers then migrated into an area where you had the Khoisan people, the Khoi and the San people, and they're the people who speak with clicks. And so the Xhosa people, who were Bantu, took part of the linguistic structure from the Khoi people, and so they have clicks in their language, as do the Zulu speakers. And so it's an amalgamation of the Khoisan and the Bantu people there, and there's literally hundreds of languages spoken there.
I wanted to say, I wanted to say one thing about the education over there and about the language, that we could see in the education there is assimilation. In most of the black schools, they don't teach history, and they don't teach the history of the apartheid, which is really bothering because they don't know why their country is in the state that it is in today. And Rylan, our friend over there, he taught me something, or he pointed out something that was really important. When we went to the school and we went into their library, we went to the African language books, and there was about 5 tiny books there on the shelf. There was barely any language books, and then everything else was in English. And we could see that as a problem because when we went to the culture ceremony, most of the men could speak at least 11 languages. Now, the new generation that's growing up can speak about 1 African language and then English. And then mostly they speak English everywhere, which is making it so that it's assimilated and they don't know about their culture anymore, and their language is becoming lost.
Another language that's spoken over there is Afrikaans, which is like a mixture of Dutch and German, and that's kind of
African.
and African, and that's kind of what the apartheid government enforced was Afrikaans.
Yeah, led to this too.
We have time for one more question. Does anybody out here want to ask a question? They're all shocking.
I'm going to be in Cape Town in a week. I'm going to be working at a community center that supports women and children impacted by HIV and AIDS. So what I'm curious, I've never been there before, and I'm curious about personal safety. I mean, did you feel comfortable walking out by yourselves, or did you stay in a group, or just, I'm kind of curious.
I think that's something interesting to talk about because when we first went there, the first day, we were all pretty paranoid just because of things we've heard. But during our stay continued, and we got to know the people who are living there. Just like anywhere in America, at night you have to be careful because no matter where you go, there's good and there's bad. But don't let this idea that people have told you about what the country is like or how much you have to be aware of your safety cloud your judgment of who's actually living there. It's people just like us. They're just going about their daily life. So maybe at night, yes, be cautious, but always be open-minded and open-hearted to the people there, because they're really the kindest, most compassionate people I ever met.
That's a good place to close. We want to really thank you for all coming out. Thanks so much. And but if I would be remiss if I didn't say we want to thank everybody who donated to our food drive. You didn't have a chance to see the children. The children were so happy receiving those gifts, and they were so appropriate for them. Thank you, everybody that contributed to that clothing drive. I mean, not food drive, clothing drive.